question that I wanted to put out to the table was this concept of having you identify for us really what the goal is within your organization and how bringing together the marketing and technology functions would benefit and help you to reach those goals.
I think there's a difference between do and do it smartly. And I think where we're really all seeking, the analytics that drive the decision making, the analytics that ensure that we are hitting the productivity metrics that we're all being held accountable for, because it's just not about activities, right? That's very 2 decades ago. I think now all of us are being held accountable to yield, productivity, outcomes, impacts. And so that means you take the bias for action, but you've got to be making really well-informed judgments and executing in a way that says you've had analytics that help you understand what you're going to get on the backside of it.
It seems to us that, that the emerging currency of marketing is relationship, not only just like the historical transactional relationship with the customer, but there's this emerging kind of advocative relationship that person has with everyone else. And such that marketing then, you have relationships as currency, you are increasingly being pushed in a direction of having to conduct that communication in a real time, in an increasingly near to real time setting, such that then you can't do that well without an analytics set coming and giving you visibility to what's going on there. This partnership seems to be like the essential partnership of the next generation of marketing.
Couldn't agree more with that. I mean, my whole goal is to convince the company that if they spend more money with me, I'll give them a better return, and I need that platform.
Yeah.
And I agree with you, Lauren, so much. It used to be, let's do 100 trade shows a quarter. Boy, that sounds like we're doing a lot. We all felt good, but we didn't know until 5 salespeople said I had good leads, and then we felt good again. But a year later we said, what the hell, we get out of those events? Nothing.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And it's not just isolated or limited to marketing, right? In other words, at least in the B2B space, a big part of our remit is to ensure that our sales colleagues are as productive as they possibly can be. What helps them become productive? Great analytics and insights so that, you're not casting a fishing hook into the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. You actually have a big old net, and that net's been predetermined based on some good insight about where the customer is, where they are in their decision-making journey, and that for sales is as valuable, if not more valuable, than it is from a marketing point of view. So we're certainly for Juniper, very switched on to having the right kind of analytics, ensure that we're not just doing activities, but that we're trying to do things as efficiently and effectively as we possibly can.
We have to, because we're being held to those very
Absolutely.
high goals. We're all being held to those high goals that you mentioned. I've worked on a number of turnarounds and restarts over the past few years, and that means small to mid-sized companies. So I inherited all the legacy issues with IT. As a result, the decision has been time and time again, hit the cloud. Bypass IT completely, get our marketing analytics in the cloud, get our lead generation, our lead management, take it all outside, and make sure that those vendors are accountable to us and no other political system within the corporation.
I have outsourced many IT projects because I was way down on the IT food chain. And it's like, well, if this is strategic, if this is going to drive revenue, I'm going to write a check and I'm going to use some of my marketing funds to outsource IT in order to get this stuff done. And it was accepted by the executive staff and the CEO and the board of directors. It's like, well, IT is out of control. IT's got all these other issues, and if marketing needs to do this, we got to let them go. It's a pretty sad statement, but
I know. That's the reality. A similar example. I was hired as a consultant for a multi-billion-dollar multi-channel retailer. Did a project. They spent a couple of $100,000 on me and my colleagues to evaluate what their next step was in developing their next customer-facing marketing decision-making engine. And after bringing all of the vendors in and spending all of the money on us, they put the project on hold because IT couldn't implement the integration.
So doesn't that that beg the question about the talent and sort of the people that need to be on staff? I mean, isn't there a need for sort of a new type of IT professional?
I think so, yeah. I mean, we have everything at Infoblox in the cloud except for Oracle. Our IT CIO, who I almost brought, but Liz said no seats left, because I thought it would be fun to have him, basically feels that he's an SLA engine, right? And he provides connectivity, he provides the platform for our web properties. Other than that, he's happy to outsource everything if it means the business moves faster. So time to value is his mantra. And I think he's accepting the future. We're lucky. We've got a really visionary CIO, and the company in general is not afraid to outsource anything if it means we move faster and cut costs. So I think new IT is embracing outsourcing and managing those relationships and not trying to do it all in-house and build it.
And that's been changing. I mean,
Yeah.
for those of us who market to that target, CIO target, if you've looked over the last, say, decade, for a long, long time, IT was a cost center, right? And in the last decade, it's really shifted because now, many CIOs report into the CEO of the company or into the CFO. Why? Because they're perceived to be leading a function that's intended to provide strategic advantage. And that's a big shift because for many, many years, and this is a space that, this is where my background is, it was a long time where IT was a cost center. And then somewhere about 15 years ago, it started to shift radically as companies realized that innovation was going to be the game changer in terms of how they would reach customers, have intimacy with customers, relationship with customers, and that your data sets, your information became a really important tool. So I think if you're in an environment with a colleague or a team that's sort of switched on to that, you actually don't have these issues. If you're not in that environment, I think it's got to be, frankly, a drag. But if you're in an environment where you've got a CIO who gets it and their team gets it, they understand that part of what they're helping us do is drive growth for the business, which means that's where their efforts need to be focused.
Cut costs and drive revenue.
It seems to me there's been a change in terms of like what the core relationship with the CIO or the technology people has been historically. In the marketing organization, it was typically used, that relationship was typically used to drive measurement, provide reporting on activity that was created by a marketing department, largely who was drawing data points from places outside the IT infrastructure, from research projects and other things that they were doing. Now, you need the customer data to create relevance in the messaging. It's another reason I think why that becomes such a critical.
What about
It's true, but for us, we're seeing. I don't get much of that from the IT department. We use our vendors, and it's like everything's going on demand. Everything's a SaaS solution. So I get that from the vendors, and the IT is the vendor manager of those things. Not they're not providing value-added insight, providing project management, from the implementation standpoint, maintenance standpoint, vendor management standpoint.
Yeah, that's what I meant by the
But the rest of it is us working directly with the vendors. So Omniture, Salesforce, companies like that.
In technology companies, at least in ours, we use both the instincts as well as the data. I think that particularly with regard to big shifts, it's hard to read it in the data. And so, I think a lot of our sort of big ideas are sort of the next big S-curve and so on. A lot of that is really, whether it's the executive staff or the president or, the thought leaders sort of putting mind over matter, engagement over just sort of trying to parse it in the data and saying, this is the big shifts we're going to make. And then a lot of the tactics, which campaign performs better or which tool to use or whatever, a lot of that is done through data. But, you really cannot suppress the instincts, the gut, the creativity of people I'm a big believer in data, but I do think both have a place.
We love data, we rely on data, but it doesn't mean we own the data. Like you said, gut reaction sometimes is very, very powerful. You go on instinct. The highest visitor day to our website that we ever had was on April Fool's, when on instinct, a week prior, a bunch of people got together and they're like, you know what, we should do this cool prank for April Fools. Let's produce angry nerds. As opposed to angry nerds. And it was nerds you shoot out of air and chairs onto bugs.
That's awesome.
And we just did one landing page, the prototype of the page. We had about 6 different nerd personas, and you could, tweet your favorite nerd and like your favorite nerd. This thing went hugely viral. I mean, exponentially biggest they've ever had. And it was one of those gut feelings, but everybody was on the same page. It was like this spark of genius. We were like, okay, here's how we're going to build it, how it's going to look, how we're going to measure it. And it's been almost a year, and it keeps on giving. So there's something to be said for those sparks of creativity.